Welcome back to this Liability Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Bola Akintenewa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Well, Professor Akintenewa is not joining us in the studio. He's going to join us virtually, where I hope Prof will be able to figure that out. And then Professor Anthony Killer, Professor of Strategy and Development, and Director at Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies. Yemi Adamalekun, Executive Director in Office of, whose father just turned 80. And we've been celebrating Professor Ladipo Adamalekun, foremost professor of public administration in Nigeria, an international scholar and a very distinguished citizen. And then, of course, Chiko Gia is here, former Commissioner for Information Data State and Managing Director of Mark Foley Limited. Well, gentlemen, there are only gentlemen in the media, I'm told.
But I'm not a media personality.
Well,
I'm not a journalist.
You're one of us. Okay, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Now, we have our two guests. Gita Adeniji, partner ENR Limited, an energy lawyer, very well-informed man, who has given us insights into the commercialization of the NNPC and issues also in the mining sector. And we also had a second guest, Dr. Alera Roberts, senior lecturer at the Lagos University of Lagos Teaching Hospital, who has spoken about major health issues. WHO declaring monkeypox as an issue of international concern, as a global emergency, and also how in Nigeria, there's been a sharp increase within a week in the positivity rate of COVID transmission, COVID infection, and issues from a public health perspective about what should be done about this. Well, very quickly, if Professor Akintenewa is ready, I would like to start with you. Professor Bola Akintenewa, are you with us?
Always with you.
Prof. Okay.
Always with you.
I was going to put it.
Professor Dari said, at home, abroad. And abroad, at home. I'm always with you.
Oh, very good.
I listened to our very good lawyer, Gita Adeniji, and Dr. Alera Roberts. Both of them raised some critical points of observation. Beginning with Gita Adeniji, he raised the issue of mischief and, governance structure. Using the two observations as a good basis to justify a brighter future for the NNPC. As much as I would like to agree with him, I think a triangle will not be a triangle if it has only two sides. A third side will be required. In this case, the environment of this mischief, the environment of this governance structure remains constant. He has not told us about the attitudinal disposition of the operators. NNPC, is it not going to be that of the same operators, for instance? I know we are going to have involvement of Nigerians, either as shareholders in one way or the other, but giving us the impression that you now have a statutory mandate. Is it that we do not have laws in Nigeria? Is it that we do not have a statutory mandate when Nigerians deliberately and openly disregard laws? You can have the statutory mandate, but how will you explain the fact that people still break the laws? Why I raise this observation is simple. Our own president President Muhammadu Buhari, is he not aware of the fact that there is a principle of federal character? If he does know, why is it that he is not bothered about his politics of nepotism, even in the NNPC? People have complained openly that at the level of the senior level officers, NNPC, the first 20, the first 25, 21, they are from the same ethnic groups. They have northerners there, and people are saying, no, reflect federal character. He didn't. Now, impression is being given that because there is now a statutory mandate, you change the logo, you change the status, and therefore, you now think that people will be behaving normally. Well, the question I will ask, or my observation is that you cannot make changes within continuity and expect that the future will be bright. No, unless you need divine magic to change that. The idea of NNPC being commercialized, and I like the question raised by Dr. Abati, where he was starting this program, said Abati, unlike Abati that he was talking about before. Probably this is a new approach, trying to borrow also from NNPC that is new. So in this case, let us hope for better days to come, like Jimmy Cliff will say. But for Dr. Alero Roberts, for instance, I admire virtually all the points she raised. But you see, COVID-19 has come to stay. It is still hypothetical. It cannot be theorized the way it is being presented. However, the problem we should be addressing is to take a cue from President Joe Biden. Joe Biden took the first shot. He took the second shot. He took the booster. Now, after the booster, he's again a victim. I'm now asking, are we really talking about COVID-19 virus, regardless of its variants? Is it really natural? Is it manufactured? Can it not be considered as an instrument of recolonization in a different form? Why is it that all these things are coming and internationally speaking, everything is attributed to Africa as source of origin? I think that our Dr. Roberts and our other colleagues, we need to sit down, let Nigeria provide leadership in this matter. This idea of an instruction coming from a supranational authority, giving us all this based on advice is good consultation. But I think that our Nigerian doctors worldwide, especially those that are in Europe and America, they are good. Let Nigeria provide or organize an international summit of Nigerian medical and paramedical people. Let them sit down and see, so that for once we can have a leeway. This is the way I want to look at it for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Akintenewa. Well, Professor Kila, you listen to the two issues.
Yes.
Yes. The new NNPC and also the fifth wave of COVID and the WHO declaring monkeypox as a global emergency.
Well, I think the new NNPC, it's a good thing that they're trying to change what we have at the moment. Most people agree, not everybody, that what we have at the moment is not good. So you want to change it. You can argue that are we being reformist or radical? You know, we're moving from pure state control to commercialization. And you can argue that we should be going towards privatization rather than stopping at commercialization. I think unfortunately, we do not have sort of content-led debates in politics, because this could be a good way for political parties. Well, let's put it this way. The people doing this are going away whatever happens, or well, at least normal circumstances, they should be out of the door in 7 months or less than a year anyway. So this is a process they're putting in place to be taken over by the new ones coming, as it were. Ideally, this could be a chance for us to have a debate between two blocks of ideas to say, I am going to privatize or I'm going to commercialize right away or gradually. That could have been a good divide. I think it's good that we're going, the idea of commercialization is that it is value-driven, it's merit-based, it's clear outcome, it's result, not explanation. But then, if you know the history of commercialized government entities we have in Nigeria, there's no logical reason to be optimistic, because this is a country of Nigerian Airways, and which was government owned and was meant to be commercialized. It's a country of many other things like that. But that said, because at least notionistically they're trying to do something good, move away from where they are, we should just two things. One is finger crossed, but more practically is maybe to be vigilant. I think I'm more optimistic than the speaker, because it is true that the problems are a lot. It is true, and unlike Professor Kentariwa, it is true that the same people, the same context, as you would say, why would you expect something else? You could expect something else because, and we go back to law, because we know the mischief that you wanted to kill. If we're aware, that what is the intent of this new move, if we're aware of what we're trying to repair, what we're to improve on, then we can take quantum leap. Rather than wait for the whole thing to take the usual amount of time, we can quote unquote boost it. We can make things faster because we know what our concern is. And I think that's what we need to. The oil thing is crucial for people because it's a big sector in Nigeria. It's a place where once you understand the sector you're inside it, you make big bucks. And a lot of rich people in Nigeria are directly or indirectly involved in the oil and gas sector. So, that tells you why the attraction should be there. And because it's very government managed, almost monopoly, regulated, where you deal on concessions, licenses. So it is, very intertwined to politics. It's not the normal trade of bullets or ties. Actually, bullet is very regulated, but it's not the normal trade of, of cake and ties anyway. And that is one thing there. The health thing, sadly, this COVID seems to have come to stay. But the good thing is that the efficient part of COVID, actually the effective part of COVID, does not require big government intervention. It's just good table manners. The idea that we can all understand. I think it's gone down now. All of a sudden, at some point, people were used to, instead of shaking hands, having the fist greetings. And I think that's a good thing. Wash your hands, stay away from people, hug less, and stay alive.
Okay. Before I come to you, Yemi, let's take Chike Ogia's input. Chike Ogia, your turn, your take.
Well, I listened to Bite. He used to be my partner a while ago. He's done extensive work in the...
Your partner, please, can you explain that?
My partner in the law firm, which was called the Law Union.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not lesbian.
Thank you for the clarification.
And I know he's done extensive work in the energy sector. And basically, what was he saying? Just like what our new lawyers of today, the two professors that have spoken, were trying to talk about the mischief that was trying to be cured. Obviously, the mischief is simple. That corporation, as a government entity, was not working for Nigerians. It was not working for anybody. It was just working for a few people. And you want to open it up. It was opaque, like he said. Licenses were offered on basis of who you know and all of that. So what you want to do now is that you want to, borrowing Professor Killer's word, you can do that quantum leap. Why not? Because we know where we are going. And again, I can tell you, Prof, what is coming in 7 months in terms of in the new government, both presidential candidates have been with us forever, and I can assure you that it's not it's the simplest thing to guess that both of them are free enterprise kind of people.
Yeah.
So
All
those
of
are
them,
people that will go
zero.
all out for it, I can assure you. Because the commercialization bus stop, if you asked me, is just putting old wine, in a new bottle. It's the same thing. Or is it,
Yes,
old wine in a new bottle. Because if we don't get a new board, how can you have a federal government board and you are talking about corporate governance and all these things, So we have to change all those things. We have to get new policies in that will work and turn this whole thing around, and then get it to play as a private sector player. And that is the only way you can achieve those high, lofty goals of wanting to compare them to Petronas or Petrobras and Aramco and all of that. So to that extent, I think it's something that we should be, as a people, very keen to put our eyes on it. Again, like Professor Akintarenwa said, how do you commercialize when you have a board that is predominantly from one section of the country and all of that? So already that shows, that whole thing it can't work. So we just better stop now and unbundle the whole thing and retool it and get it ready for us to work. That's my take on that.
Okay.
Then in the case of the monkeypox, which obviously is being juxtaposed with COVID-19, I mean, Mrs. Roberts also made it clear to us that these are, these viruses are mutants. They keep mutating, so they are going nowhere. They are here to stay with us. So what do? Normal protocol, defend ourselves, like you said. Prevention is better than cure. Even in the case of the monkeypox, wherever it is found, whether amongst men, like you said, men are usually the first hunters to go because these are all animal diseases that are transferred to human beings. And whatever we need to do, I think she emphasized a very important point, and which she says that our government institutions, our medical institutions, our health institutions needs to be strengthened to be able to withstand these onslaughts and to be able to prepare the country for these kind of things, because they are not going anywhere, whether it is influenza, whether it is chicken pox, whether it's smallpox, whether it's monkeypox, whether it's COVID-19. They are here to stay with us like all the other ones before them have stayed with us. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chike Ogea. Now I come to you, Yemi Adamolekun.
I mean, main issues, I think.
I was reminded that your name is actually Opeyemi
Yes.
Adamolekun. Yemi is the shortened form.
Thank you.
Tax on,
Sorry?
pay less tax.
Because it's Yemi, right? Got it. I mean, the popular phrase goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think Professor Kila alluded to that in saying that, yes, but it's not about changing a logo or unveiling. Our Minister of Petroleum has probably done more with this unveiling that he's done in his 8 years. No, seriously, in 7 years, exactly. Probably actually spoke a bit more about the sector that he supervises just by unveiling a new logo and talking about a new entity. But the key to that is it's a new logo, same people. But until we see, Mr. Deniji made the point about trying to get us to slow down criticism. But it's kind of hard when there's a pattern, as you alluded to, of commercialized government agencies that have gone before NNPC and what it turned out to. But we will see, and it will be interesting, especially with the new candidates, the new president. We will certainly have a new president next year, so it'll be interesting to see what comes with that. Because if you compare it with telcos, for example, that were privatized, and we see how that sector has boomed, then we have discos that were commercialized with government and private hands in both, and I think they've reclaimed 4 or 5 of them out of the 10 because they're not doing well, and now we have NNPC. For health, I love Dr. Roberts' 2 points that she kept saying. Prevention is better than cure. Don't get sick. And I think it's really an indictment. Oh, no, maybe not an indictment, really, just a reminder. And that's the truth of the matter. About the states of our health sector and how bad it is. When a medical doctor is telling you, please don't get sick, just because we are not in a place that we can take care of you.
Frightening mirror.
Indeed, very much so. And 2 things for me that I'd like to draw. Under Fashola in Lagos State, Lagos had started reworking its pipes to provide a functional waterworks so that people could turn on their taps and get water. Under Ambode, it was not continued, and Governor Sanwo-Olu has done nothing with it, even though I do know clearly that both of them got the plans. Oando was providing gas, we were pumping water, and people were opening taps and getting water. A couple of weeks ago, the Commissioner of Health in Lagos said borehole water is unsafe for drinking. But when COVID was at the height of it in 2020, there was a lot of messaging about health and prevention. But in one vein, we're saying borehole water is unsafe for drinking. We're not providing water, which is part of the duty of a government, and yet we're complaining that people are getting sick. Challenge. And during this week, I was in Ondo State, and a gentleman got up and says he doesn't understand what the Ministry of Water Works is doing. Because in all his years, this is probably almost a 60-year-old man, he does not recall that Ondo has ever had pipe-borne water. So he doesn't quite understand the job of the ministry. So it does leave a lot to be said if we're worried about spiking cases of COVID or monkeypox or whatever it is. But the government still is not paying as much attention to messaging on preventive care, and then more importantly, providing facilities that are its duty to provide as a government.
Okay, thank you, Yemi Adamalekun. We intend to take a few more topics before we wrap it up today. But let's take this topic from the aviation sector. As part of steps to deal with an increase in the price of aviation fuel, local airlines this past week requested the authorities to levy a new fuel tax of between 25 and 40% on consumers. The operators, who have been hard hit by the rising cost of aviation fuel and operations, claimed that a new surcharge is necessary for their survival, even if it will soon have an impact on the already high cost of living. Well, that's the big challenge that we face. Two airlines are already out of operation.
Yeah.
The Aero Contractors has suspended parts of its operations. The Civil Aviation Authority has already banned Dana. Last month, the Airline Operators of Nigeria sounded a note of warning that many airlines in Nigeria will not be able to operate again. Principal reason, foreign exchange crisis, turnaround time at the airports, particularly in Lagos, particularly now that a runway is being fixed. And then, of course, the high cost of aviation fuel. And fourth, the failure of government to address the issues. Chike, you used to be a player in that sector. Yeah. Your take?
Yeah, that was part of my previous life, definitely. And one I got valuable experience from, because I was in that sector for all of about 8 years actively, and then on a board for almost 15 years. So I've seen the sector really develop and transform, but it has obviously not moved in the kind of direction it should move. And it's a big pity, because this is a sector that we say that there are only 3 things that matter there, and that is safety, safety, safety. And all those 3 things, if you ask me today, due to the extenuating circumstances and the operating circumstances they find themselves, are all being imperiled. And, Aero, which is a legacy airline, maybe in the 60s or something.
Established 1959.
Okay, in 1959, that tells you, which is as good as our history in Nigeria, has to close its doors. And the reasons for all that are not far-fetched. There's just... They don't just have the health check on these airlines, all of them. In fact, if you do a health check, if you do an audit on all of our airlines, I doubt if any of our local airlines will withstand it. That is the truth. And you can't blame them, because, you see, they are, like you rightly said, they are fighting against all odds. Now, this aviation fuel, which actually is a major threat right now, that's about to ground the sector to a halt, and if the government does not do something about it, then we will be in real trouble. And what is aviation fuel? It's really some form of refined kerosene. And why we cannot have specialized, without having a full-blown refinery, we can have some kind of smaller refineries that can actually produce aviation fuel in Nigeria. Because we have the crude here, we have everything we need here. You see, it's just the failure of this country, as it has done in every other sector, that is impacting so severely on the aviation sector. The same thing you alluded to now when you said they have closed, 18L, the local runway because they are trying to do the airfield lighting. This airfield lighting, if I remember, monies have been provided for it in the maybe 2005, 2006 budget. And we are still talking about it in 2022. And there are no consequences for anything. They've had all kinds of ministers, all kinds of MDs in FAN and all of that. At the end of the day, maybe this might be the only positive thing this minister will walk away with if he can manage to do it.
For purposes of context, Chike Ogea used to be managing director of a major company at the airports. Yeah. And then he went to be a commissioner for information in Delta State. And he came back. He's now become managing director in the hospitality sector and a talking head on television. Chike, you are not doing badly at all. But very quickly, Professor Akintenwa, let me come back to you.
Yeah, thank you again. Let's go back to the environmental conditioning of the attitudes of Nigerian leaders in the public and in the private sector. I see regularly one video in which the aircraft of some nations, South Africa, United States, Ethiopia, Egypt, by the time they mention the name of the country, you see the aircraft taking off, flying off. When it got to the case of Nigerian Airways all along, it was grounded. And the plane was so dirty where it is. That tells you, that signals, for instance, a message. Now, Chike had already given us an overview of the various challenges. But I think that the implication of the high cost of management, the factor of insecurity, it is just the ordinary people of Nigeria that we have to bear the brunt for that. For instance, it is no longer safe to travel by road in Nigeria. People ran away from traveling by road, taking trains. The trains now have become another problem of its own. The only last means of moving from one major city to another is traveling by air. But with the cost now, then that means the ordinary man cannot travel. Now, with the economic, the inclement economic conditions in Nigeria, will just make business to be stalled. So in this case, I believe that things are getting worse under President Muhammadu Buhari. He's making efforts, making progress on one side, one step forward, two steps backward. I cannot understand how, for instance, when, let me quickly take you back to the joy of PMB telling us he started NNPC July 1977. July 2022 is also seen to the change in status all along. But the problem now is that whether you are talking about NNPC or aviation sector, why is it that the government, this same government, this administration of Muhammadu Buhari, is having problems with the most critical areas of life? Survival list areas of life. Why? I think that something must be done. People are telling us in 7 months' time, we'll have a new government. Well, you have a new government, but the people that will constitute the government, they are still basically the Nigerians. Institutional corruption was what destroyed Nigeria Airways. All right? That was what was responsible. Now, institutional corruption is the current problem. We moved from individual corruption in discipline. 1987, Professor G.S. Cookie said 20 years ago, referring to 1967, that the bane of society is corruption, indiscipline. Yet we still have that. For as long as we have this indiscipline, this corruption, please, aviation sector crisis will continue.
Well, Prof, okay, I would like to have the inputs of Yemi Adamolekun and then Professor Kila, and then I hope we'll be able to take one more subject before we wrap it up today. Yemi Adamolekun.
Well, I mean, just to follow up on Prof, fuel price, diesel price, aviation fuel, and all of them are all tied to a fundamental base product that we own naturally. And so we're struggling with all three for a failure of governance. It's really that simple. So until governance shifts, aligns, adjusts, and we get people in government, or we choose people to govern us who actually have a vision for this raw material that we have that can make all our lives easier, we will make progress. But I think maybe the difference is maybe we need to be a bit more deliberate about helping people connect the dots. And I think for a lot of us in Nigeria, we kind of compartmentalize our issues and deal with it as it needs to be dealt with. But if we realize that all these things are tied together and we keep telling ourselves that and keep connecting those dots, maybe we'll make better decisions.
Okay, Professor Kila?
Well, I think most things have been said. I think part of the problem we have, definitely there's a competence leadership problem. But it's also the mindset, the former mentees, to know, for example, that in a country like Nigeria, structurally, aviation is a basic essential sector because of the size of the country. We need to deal with it that way. You have the contingental issue, which makes it complicated because of security now, which makes it even more important. If we start from there, we will then realize that the problem of aviation should be a national problem. It should be dealt with, because what we have is really a chronicle of a death pre-announced, because fuel, forex going up, consequence will be price. Chike Ogia says there are three things in aviation: security, security, security. It is true, but you see, you can be nice, you can do quality assurance if you have money. Mm-hmm. Finance is a major issue, actually, because when you go to apply for license in the NCAA, one of the things they pay attention to is finance. Can you pay for this? Can you buy this? Can you recruit these people? Can you maintain this or that? So I think that we need a kind of leadership, and I use the word leadership, not government or governance, that will look at this sector and deal with it. Because when Jigogia rightly points out that the fuel they need, the aviation fuel, is a quote-unquote and doable thing. So you say to yourself, that challenge should be an opportunity for investors. You know, why not raise the issue? So I think the leadership thing now needs to go cross-board, both private and public leadership. We need to realize that as leaders of thought, leaders of enterprise, and leaders of governance in that order, the governance one at the very last bottom, should now try to find solutions together. And I think that is what's required of this generation.
Okay, let's take one more topic. As you already know, the cost of servicing Nigeria's debt has surpassed the federal government's retained revenue by 310 billion naira in the first quarter of 2022, according to a document released by the federal government. The total revenue for the period was 1.63 trillion, while debt service cost gulped 1.94 trillion. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said that urgent action is now required to address revenue underperformance and expenditure efficiency at national and sub-national levels. Here is a report.
Opened up our books to enable citizens to have information to hold government to account. That's the purpose of the effort we have been doing to be transparent in our budget. If you look at the budget office, or any budget you are looking for, you see the details. The Treasury portal of the Accountant General has the details of the expenditure. It is for citizens to use that information to ask informed questions so that there is a push for improvement. So
oftentimes I hear that we talk about borrowing. Is borrowing a bad thing? No, it's not. It depends on what you are borrowing for. If you are borrowing for consumption, then it is bad. But if you are borrowing for production, it is good.
You can see that the revenue to GDP ratio of Nigeria is among the lowest in the world, and we keep highlighting this even in a period of recession. So data from the World Bank show that in 2020, out of about 196 countries covered in the IMF, in the World Bank's economic outlook, Nigeria was 194 in terms of revenue to GDP. So something is wrong. We can't keep saying, size of budget one is low, debt service to revenue is high, debt stock to GDP of those countries are high, but debt service for those countries are low because they have revenues. And I think revenues are the collective responsibility of Nigeria. We can't stop talking about revenues. What is the government doing? But I think individually we all have responsibilities for revenue.
Okay, the Department of Management, Debt Management Organization keeps talking about, oh, we're still within the range, there's no problem. Yeah. But the reality is that debt has exceeded revenue by up to about 119%.
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean? Because I know you write columns on economic issues,
yes,
Professor
I do.
Killer.
I do. And I think, you see, the first thing that comes to my mind is that we should have been discussing this as an emergency, because anybody that follows the economy and economics will know that we were moving towards that tail. So the minister should not be there saying, oh, it's a good thing I'm showing you. So what stage? It's a good thing I'm showing you I wet my bed. Well, what's the point? I'm opening my room so you can see that there is chaos. That does not cut it. We should be talking about this like 6 months or 2 years ago to say, this is what we're going to find ourselves. Because the job of economics is that you can actually predict. There are signs to do that. This is what we're going to find ourselves in 18 months, in 24 months. So therefore, these are actions that we're taking. We say this discussion, morally, debt looks bad. But in corporate existence, it's not that bad. Why? Because what you borrow for generates more than you have borrowed. The reason why we talk about capital project, because capital renders interest. So when you borrow money, whether it's to make a road or to build a house or school or anything, you should be seeing where that revenue is going to come from. I have a concern now. When I hear Nigerian government people talk about revenue, they seem to talk about tax, but it shouldn't be that way. So where we are now to see that this money that we've borrowed, rather than use it to pay debt, we should be seeing the projects that we used it for. What can we generate out of those projects?
Okay, Chike, are we seeing the projects, or we are just borrowing for consumption rather than productivity, which is a touchy point?
For me, if you ask me, in my simple mind, I'm not an economist. I listened very attentively to Professor Killer. If you ask me, I would say we are borrowing to pay debt. That's what we're doing in Nigeria. It's simple. Because the other thing we could ask is, where are those projects? Maybe government will do us a lot of good by even showing us those projects we borrowed for. And then let's see how productive those projects are. Because the first thing I see is the rail project. And the track has been destroyed by bandits. We can't use them. So of what use has that money we borrowed for to build the Kaduna-Abuja rail has been? Okay, we borrowed massively again, back again to this same aviation sector that I said used to be my past life. We built a fantastic terminal at the Murtala Mohammed Airport. We cannot use it because they did not think about an apron when they were designing it. So what are we saying?
I mean, I think for me, the biggest point is the fact that it's being presented as breaking news.
Right. Yeah.
And so if the minister actually thinks it's truly breaking news, then she really needs to be fired. But the president doesn't fire anyone, so hey. Oh, and then the banner. Anyway, let's leave that.
Oh no, let's talk about the banner. They wrote arrive promptly, or sort of 10 a.m. prompt to a finance meeting. No, you shouldn't be writing that. People should know they should be prompt. It depicts a sort of pedestrian level of our way of doing things. I don't know who to blame for that. Who can we blame?
Okay, just to give the final word on this, Professor Akintenwa.
Thank you. Professor Kila was correct, but I think that Chiko Gia was more correct. The minister was telling us stories, trying to misinform us by telling us about normal circumstances.
Yeah.
When you borrow for productive purposes, fine, no problem. But the bitter truth here, we know, is that we are borrowing to pay salaries, we are borrowing money to service, not giving any money, no money left for development. I conclude on the implications. The agreements done with China, for instance, with all others, what are the conditionalities? When you are unable, when you become insolvent and you cannot pay, they take over of your facilities. The agreement done on the railway by Rotimi, Amechi, etc., that agreement, the draft that was shown, the agreement that was done, there were some pages, for instance, that had no content. Either they were blank, whatever, we don't know. They didn't tell us any information. So if already you even borrow to produce, and then the agreement is not complied with, what purpose? We must do away with governments that tell us lies. Every time, take any aspect, any sector, it's the same thing.
Okay. Prof, I like your passion. At over 70, Prof is still in this saluta continua process. But I mean, what we've been told that we can hold on to is that there's nothing wrong in borrowing. You can borrow, but you must not borrow to fund inefficiency and incompetence. There must be evidence of productivity. Thank you very much, Professor Akintenwa Chikugia, Professor Anthony Kila, and Okweyemi Adamolekun. Thank you very much. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.